You'll have the opportunity to go to our YouTube channel, our website, our Facebook page for that matter, and that you can review the program thereafter. So fear not in the event that you miss any aspect of it. You can always revert to those channels to watch the session at your leisure and pleasure. And also at the end of our program today, we will place a link in our chat section of the Zoom platform, inviting you to weigh in and give your comments, give your feedback on today's session. Now, for the first quarter of 2024, we looked at tax and being compliant. We had between January and March, our sessions focus on, ensuring that our members understand what's happening out there in the arena of taxation, banking, and being compliant with the various regulatory frameworks in place. And this quarter, as we begin now, April through June, we want to maybe look a little deeper at how we can bring some opportunities to our members, areas that we can monetize, our existing resources, the opportunities that are presented to us. So rest assured that between April and June this quarter, we are going to bring a number of speakers and organizations to you that will help now focus your business on maybe doing business and doing better business. How can you really access the opportunities that are out there? And that's going to be our focus for this quarter. So today we'll start the conversation, we start the dialogue, looking at how we can monetize our coastal resources. Now, many of you will recall that some time ago there was a ministry dedicated to the blue economy. It's been incorporated in another ministry of late, we understand. But the focus still is there. The fact that we have vast resources around us, and we are not, maybe focusing enough on how we can really commercialize these opportunities that do exist. And we thought that we'll begin this quarter focusing on this conversation. Now, I know that, in preparing for the session, some persons did comment, not as sexy as the last couple of topics. We agree. However, ways to make money and ways to commercialize opportunity, in our view, must be harnessed, because we are, at the end of the day, in the business of making money, realizing profit, turning our ideas, turning our skills and so on into money-making ventures. And so as a business community, as a business network, we want to maximize on these opportunities that are available to us. So today I'm very pleased to have with us Dr. Leo Brewster, who is the director of the Coastal Zone Management Unit. He is here to share in our topic this morning on monetizing the coastal resources, a discussion on the blue economy. So a little bit about our presenter. No stranger to the SBA. We've had the Coastal Zone Management team with us in the past. Ironically enough, we were looking at preparing for, tsunamis, the eventuality of a tsunami affecting Barbados and our region. What should we do? And maybe Dr. Brewster may touch on that a little bit today, but he's here to give a broader perspective on how we can really commercialize the resources that are around us. Dr. Brewster, as I mentioned, is the director of the Coastal Zone Management Unit, the Blue Economy section within the Ministry of Environment and National Beautification. He holds a PhD in Integrated Coastal Zone Management from Cardiff University, Wales in the UK. And with over 35 years of experience, he is very familiar with the development of integrated coastal zone management plans and activities, as well as rapid assessment techniques for coastal impacts. He has represented Barbados at international conventions in the areas of coastal management, coastal vulnerability assessment, biodiversity beyond national jurisdictions, marine environmental protection, and climate change. He has a strong interest in projects related to climate change, coastal vulnerability assessment, impacts on the ocean and science, coastal resilience and adaptation designs, and new investment projects of interest to Barbados with a blue economy focus and defined approach. He is currently the Barbados lead representative on several of the Commonwealth Secretariat's Blue Charter action groups. And so, colleagues, you will agree with me that based on this short bio, our presenter this morning is more than capable of helping us to distill this topic today as we look at monetizing our coastal resources, a discussion on the blue economy. So members of the Small Business Association, colleagues and friends all, please let us welcome Dr. Leo Brewster now to share with us in our webinar for the month of April. And immediately thereafter, we will have a short Q&A session. So once again, welcome and thank you so much for being with us today. Over to you, Dr. Brewster.
Okay, thanks a lot, Dr. Holder. It's my pleasure to be here to touch on the subject matter, which I was told I had to speak on, which is monetizing coastal resources, a discussion on the blue economy. So I think that what I will do is try and chart a path and picture for us all to really and truly understand where we are with the blue economy and what is really meant by interpreting the blue economy and how Barbados is looking to progress with the blue economy approach, and look at a couple of things that not only applies to small business, but general private sector activities that can be of relevance for Barbados in the future. I think that we'll just run through with a couple ideas, focusing on oceans, what's the blue economy, how important the blue economy is, how it contributes potentially to Barbados' future development, and then looking at monetizing coastal resources, and we will sum up. I hope I don't go too fast because I only have an hour, so people always say that I talk too much, but we will see. When we're looking at the ocean, we have to recognize that the ocean space covers over 70% of the Earth, right? So it is vast. And because of all the ecosystems that can be found therein, from not only right up on the shoreline, all the way down to the abyssal plain and the Marianas Trench, which is the deepest part of the ocean in the world, we have a clear implication as to the role and function that it plays, not only in shaping society, in terms of all coastal developments along a shoreline, not only for tourism, but industrial and commercial development, but also more importantly, because of the role it plays in climate regulation. Because of its vastness, it covers all aspects of climate regulation through the absorption of gases and also the absorption of excess temperature and heat. Because of its nature, it also generates the air that we breathe, because 50% of the ocean's oxygen is stored and produced through normal activities between the exchange of the ocean surface and the upper layers of the atmosphere. We all know the water cycle, where water is transferred, evaporates, goes onto the land, falls onto the hills, streams, rivers, runs into valleys, and then into the near shore again, and the process is repeated. The importance of it is also because it provides an important means of transport for majority of trade, especially with bulky items. It is used extensively for recreation, including fishing, boating, kayaking, whale watching, and it is a primary source of economy for all countries in the world that are buttoned or bound directly onto it. It has been used within the last 25 years now for identification of potential medicines through bioprospecting and biotechnology activities to look at finding cures for different diseases that can impact man, and it is a primary food source generally the world over. One of the biggest concerns, obviously, that the ocean faces is not only generalized pollution in the forms of land-based runoff, where all pollutants from the land make their way into the sea, but more importantly as well, we now have issues that speak to plastics, and the creation of microplastics through the ultimate breakdown of plastics within the water column. You also have a situation whereby for an exceedingly long time, you had stable current patterns operating right the way around the world. And in essence, through this system of cycling, you had a condition where warm water floats at the surface. When it heads into the northern Arctic and southern Antarctic regions, it is driven into the deep, and then it is transported by those deep conveyors back into areas to then come back up at the surface, right? And through that cycling pattern, that is how general ocean currents are made. And then also because of aspects of temperatures and wind, you then get the surface driven ocean currents that will force waters in different directions. The uniqueness about above all with all of these things is when you have currents coming to the surface from the deep, they often bring a lot of nutrients with them, which provides a source of upwelling, which is where you can normally find areas that fish will congregate and feed, or they will also maybe coincide with areas where spawning can take place, where juvenile fish can feed quite comfortably, especially along the continental shelf. So along the coast of Western Africa, the eastern coast of South America, and the western coast of South America are normally areas of excessive upwelling. Going across in the South Pacific near to Australia as well, you will have areas of upwelling, right? One of the problems that we face now, obviously, is climate change. And the reality is that because the waters are getting warmer for longer periods, as was reported in March, last year was one of the hottest years, if not the hottest year on record. And as we started this year, the trend is showing that this may be another hot year that may actually surpass last year in terms of reported global temperatures and their potential impacts. In addition to that, last year was also the hottest in terms of surface water temperatures as well that has been recorded. And we've also seen a trend starting now whereby even around Barbados, the waters are already at 30 degrees when we're still in the winter months, and we should be no more than between 27 degrees, 28 degrees for our normal water temperature. So it is clear that if the waters are warming now, by the time summer comes around, the waters are going to be very hot, and therefore we should expect to have a very active hurricane season, right? The other concern also with this is that because of the issues of greenhouse gases, etc., and the other potential impacts on human activities, you could find that this thermohaline circulation, as it's called, which is the deep water ocean currents, may actually start to slow down. And if those currents start to slow down, it would mean that things like the Gulf Stream will slow down. And if they do slow down, because of the greater presence of cold water within the system, you will have a situation whereby more nutrients are coming up to the surface, being transported, but not being effectively used, and therefore a cooling of the ocean surfaces should be expected as a counterbalance, maybe, to the warmer temperatures, but it seems highly unlikely, because once you get within the tropical band between the areas of Capricorn and the tropical Cancer, you will find that that water is going to be along the equatorial plane, is going to be consistently hot all the time. We have to make sure that global circulation patterns are able to be maintained, because if not, it can have a significant impact on the marine biological diversity of the ocean in general. So what is the blue economy? For us, the blue economy, in terms of a technical definition, is a blue economy sector is derived to promote economic growth, social inclusion, environmental protection, preservation and improvement of livelihoods, while at the same time ensuring the environmental sustainability of ocean and coastal areas for present and future generations. It sounds very similar to the definition of sustainable development, which all things obviously spin off of, and we all know that there are 17 sustainable development goals, of which life underwater, SDG 14, is one of the most important for small islands, together with that which speaks to poverty and climate change. But the whole idea behind it is to promote not only economic growth and social inclusion, but the protection, preservation, and improvement of livelihoods and the environmental protections of key environmental locations of significance to countries generally. From an economic perspective, the blue economy is actually the sum of all economic activity associated with the ocean, seas, harbors, ports, and coastal areas and/or coastal zones. So if you can actually provide a defined quantitative value for all the activities that relate to anything that touches the ocean, seas, or harbors and coastal spaces, you have a blue economy valuation easily completed. There are countries in the world that are generating ocean economy and blue economy reports on an annual basis. And that's when you look at each sector individually, identify its location, and once it falls within, I think it's 1 kilometer of the coastline, it can be deemed to be part of a blue economy revenue stream, and therefore you start to quantify how their economic activity has contributed towards the global, the national economy over the period of time that's being reported, right? So that's what it really is. There are several components to a blue economy. And the first one is that the blue economy is supposed to protect, restores, and sustain healthy coastal and marine ecosystems. So when you're looking to protect, restore, and sustain healthy and marine and coastal ecosystems, what you're trying to do is to develop things like marine conservation areas, marine protection areas, marine managed areas, whereby through those activities, you can have improved livelihoods and sustainable approaches to the use of the space. It generates sustainable, equitable economic benefits and inclusive growth. So it provides opportunities for not only big players, but small players as well to see the benefits of those activities that can occur. And it's supposed to integrate approaches between multiple industries and government. So it isn't only just a government-led initiative, it's also supposed to be a private sector-led initiative whereby you're trying to streamline activities, provide areas of new research, new technological advancement, and new opportunities for growth and development within the marine space. It allows people to think outside the box and also provide opportunities to work with government to ensure that those ideas can be brought to fruition. Sometimes it may be trial and error because obviously based on our small size, we have to recognize that scaling some of these projects can become very difficult, but it's also very important to recognize that scaling is essential for any type of new projects that are going to be coming in. It also innovates and is informed by the best available science. Now, we must ensure that you understand that the scientific approach has to be the approach that leads this process, because if not, you could have any number of persons coming in with any sort of fly-by-night idea that may not have been tested anywhere else. And, you know, it then turns into a sham and can cause significant damage or harm to your coastal space in the long term with no opportunity for recovery in the future. So you have to be very wary as you approach these things. The several sectors within the blue economy are identified on the right. They're normally things like mariculture, aquaculture, which includes cage farming and other activities that can lead to growth, which can also include sea algal cultures. It also looks at the fish processing industry and generalized fisheries, whether it be artisanal, recreational, commercial, or deep ocean. It also looks at ports, warehousing, and potential water projects. Through ports and warehousing, you're obviously looking at shipping and shipping trade, transshipment initiatives, as well as port expansion projects. In some situations, it can deal with shipbuilding and repair, and that can obviously be scaled from the large mega ships that may be built in high-end industrial countries to the small boats that we build here in Barbados, which may have potential use in other Caribbean islands, or generally just focusing on your own national shipbuilding and repair capabilities. Obviously, coastal tourism is also involved because everything that touches the coast in our context has some level of tourism input and involvement of importance, right? Marine extraction of oil and gas in the deep ocean is one thing. We as Barbados know that we don't have any nearshore oil and gas considerations at this point in time. So we're looking at deep ocean oil and gas extraction, similar to what's going on in Guyana present day. And also marine transport whereby you're looking at transshipment and the ability to build out a fleet of vessels that can not only deal with transshipment within a regional context, but also extra-regionally as well. On the newer ends, obviously, you have desalination, whereby you're taking pure seawater and creating fresh water from it, and not doing the brackish water, freshwater approach that we have actually ongoing in Barbados now. Desalination obviously is very expensive because of the energy inputs that are required, and therefore you can link potential renewable energy initiatives with that to help try to reduce electrical costs. Coastal environmental protection, to obviously look at not only creating marine protected spaces, marine conservation spaces, but areas specifically targeted for fishing activity, etc., to ensure that there's no excessive stress right across the board. Offshore wind energy and ocean energy are the two principal forms of renewable energy that can be applied within the construct of marine renewables, but there are others as well, such as ocean thermal energy conversion, and also looking at areas where you can achieve tidal energy by the changes in the height of the water levels in some areas where they're significant, which would be like the Bay of Fundy and in areas like Liverpool and the Severn Estuary in the UK. And in terms of blue bioeconomy technologies, that's looking at biotechnology, whereby you're either trying to create algae that can grow and produce fuel, or you can actually use biotechnology in terms of pharmaceutical developments. On the bottom, you can see that there's a need for things like common skills in some areas, shared infrastructure across different sectors, the sustainable use of the sea, environmental protection, especially when dealing with protection from pollution, as well as solid waste, whether in the form of marine plastics, which over the years have actually increased in terms of its significance, to the point now where the UN is considering a marine plastics ban for certain activities. Also looking at areas such as marine spatial planning, which is what Barbados has now embarked on since the signing of the Debt for Nature deal in 2022. We are now in the process of working on the development of a marine spatial plan. Maritime security, which is important but often forgotten because people only think that maritime security is supposed to deal with drug interdiction and enforcement on the waters for certain other types of activity that can take place, but it also includes monitoring, evaluating, reporting, and enforcement on illegal, unregulated, and unreported fishing. But in order to do that, you must have a competent and suitable fleet of vessels that can spend long times at sea to patrol your exclusive economic zone boundaries. And obviously the collection, storage, management, and assimilation of marine data is what's going to help drive your ability and capacity to understand the space that you are now going to be moving into. The blue economy, therefore, can be seen as areas of revenue generation through the use of smart shipping, whereby what we're finding now is that through the International Maritime Organization, shipping is getting to the state where they're actually trying to move away from diesel and look at cleaner fuels to be used. They're also looking at autonomous vessels, which are going to be carrying large cargo loads in small circuit routes. They haven't looked at actually using them on transshipment across ocean spaces yet, but within small areas like maybe the Mediterranean, the Baltic Sea, and a couple others, they're looking at automated shipping to see how that can work. It's supposed to be inclusive for all, whether you're indigenous, whether or not you're migratory, whether or not you're a national. It's supposed to include all livelihoods. It focuses on harnessing renewable energy to ensure that you can bring down your overall cost of energy production. It is primarily based on sustainable fisheries, and that's becoming even more important now because people are asking for information regarding your fishing practices, especially if you're looking to export. On the local market, it may not be applicable, but it has to start coming to bear that sustainable fishing practices are going to have to be monitored and identified as part of national reporting But most importantly, if you're looking to export to Europe, you must not only have the HACCP standard in terms of the manner in which you prepare your fish on your product for export, but more importantly, that you have traceability in terms of the mechanism and manner in which it was captured, how it was stored while it was on vessel, how it was landed and handled when it came into a fish port or market, how it was then transported to the fish processing plant, whether or not it was maintained at a suitable chill temperature throughout, etc. So there's a lot of technical reporting that now has to take place. It's supposed to also take action against illegal fishing, deal with marine litter and ocean pollution. And we know that this is a growing concern based on the amount of raw waste and solid waste materials that make their way into the oceans globally from persons who have dumps on the coastline, etc., or maybe dump into rivers and then they make their way into the ocean. It's supposed to protect coastal communities using climate resilient approaches, and it focuses on the conservation of life, of marine life especially, and the oceans while creating new jobs. As I went through before, just a quick recap again, these are the main energy sectors, but also coming out of this, you can look at things like sea salt production, which depends upon where you are, can be a new area of consideration, and carbon sequestration, which is the ability for ecosystems to capture and store carbon in a clearly defined way through their natural processes. So normally when you think of carbon sequestration, people are now talking about the ability to replant mangroves in areas because mangroves suck up a lot of carbon quickly, they grow very fast, and therefore they become like a carbon sink along the coastline. Seagrass beds similarly do that for carbon in the form of carbon dioxide dissolved in the water, which can also allow them to spread and flourish. And also, to a lesser extent, coral reefs. But coral reefs will sequester carbon into the calcium carbonate of the reef structure itself. But if you are having a situation where ocean acidification is taking place, that then becomes problematic. Aspects of maritime education and research also have to come to the fore now, because that means that from an early age, you have to be starting to expose children and your educated population as to the importance of the maritime space for all aspects that you're looking at, and the level of research that has to go into understanding and appreciating what can be found within that space, not only now, but also in terms of how you plan to look to manage it in the future. Research is very expensive and labor intensive, and therefore it can't be just viewed as a one-off initiative, but it has to be seen along a spectrum of continuous activities that are ongoing, and that can be led through places like the university or affiliated universities that the government may choose to enter into agreement with to allow us to better understand and appreciate our marine space. So several of the activity centers that we've gone through, if you're looking at harvesting of livelihoods and resources, then you have seafood and biotechnology. And if you look at the bottom, you'll see the type of spatial extent that we're looking at. And remember that the ocean space of Barbados is, as everyone keeps talking, 432 times the size of the island mass, right? So you're stretching literally from the coast all the way up to the exclusive economic zone, and then potentially extending into the deep sea, which is outside of your EEZ boundary. New areas that are coming up, obviously, would be things like seabed mining, where you may be looking for polymetallic nodules, and that is based on mineral demands for exotic minerals. Also have the energy demands for renewables and offshore oil and gas, desalination for freshwater source storage and shortages to aid in replenishment. Areas of global tourism, which are obviously expanding, and therefore you're finding that cruising, as in cruise tourism, is actually carrying on at a rapid pace as people seem to prefer short stints, seeing several locations over a period of a week to a week and a half, 2 weeks, versus coming and staying at a resort for a particular length of time. So how does the blue economy contribute to Barbados' development? As I said before, it provides new opportunities for investment. It looks at opportunities for economic growth in the short, medium, and long term. And it provides a greater appreciation of the existing economy sectors that we have that contribute to the existing national revenues. Given our small size, it also allows us, as we get into it, to be recognized as a world leader, as a small island, with responsibility for a large ocean space. Now, when you look to the right, you can see that for Barbados, our ocean space is identified in red, and it is actually one of the largest ocean spaces within the Caribbean region, right? It's 186,000 square kilometers or something like that. And that in itself makes it extremely difficult to manage. I kid you not. We have to now be looking seriously at what opportunities there are. But in comparison to some of the other small islands within the Indian Ocean and South Pacific, we're about a drop in the bucket, okay? Because some of those areas have like 4 and 6 times more ocean space than we have to be looking at to manage. So we have to be able to demonstrate that we can start looking seriously at understanding and appreciating what is out there and how we can best maximize those opportunities that can fall to us, as well as trying to ensure that we have the opportunity to ensure that everybody can get a piece of the pie. These are the traditional sectors that we all know: shipbuilding and ship repair in Barbados, transport through cargo and potential ferry services. There's been talk about ferry services within recent years, but we know that even within the OECS, there are ferries between Dominica, St. Lucia, and what's the other one? Martinique, I think, right? Fisheries is ongoing, obviously, for both nearshore and commercial, as well as recreational deep sea, and the potential for offshore oil and gas, which we haven't explored yet. And these are the new areas of opportunity for us as we look towards the big blue. We have obviously opportunities for port expansion, because everyone keeps talking about the need to separate cruise and cargo, whereby then that would then provide a greater opportunity for maximum use of the port space. Marine renewables are becoming more and more important as a new avenue for energy generation, whether it be through fixed and floating wind, the opportunity for using wave power and what that can produce, as well as opportunities in the generation of hydrogen. People keep forgetting that Rubis has actually started to set up a hydrogen plant on this island as a terrestrial venture, but there's also opportunity to use green hydrogen generated from water as a new avenue, as a new fuel source. And some of the commercial vessels, as well as some of the cruise ships, are actually starting to transition towards hydrogen as a power source for fuel, right? Desalination obviously then becomes of significance for us, because we know that we're in a water scarce country, and at certain times of year, especially now the crop is on and we're going into summer, we know that water shortages are going to become a real cause for concern, and therefore we have to start seriously looking at desalination. But we must bear in mind that the real cost of desalination also has to be recognized, okay? Because right now, Barbados and Barbadians do not pay for the real cost of water production. And that is something that everyone has to bear. Everyone is going to cry out, obviously, if they had to pay what the real cost of water production would be, but that cost is going to be coming very soon, in my opinion, right? Fish processing has opportunities for advancement and expansion, because as we are fishing, there can be opportunities for new fish species to be identified for commercial exploitation, because we haven't really looked at the deep pelagics. We normally do the mid-water and surface pelagics, but deep pelagics could also become a new area of potential export and interest. Aquaculture, we've tried aquaculture already in the past in St. Lucie, where we were looking at the growing out of red drum, and that was when they also tried to look at dolphin as well. But the potential for it, as it's being done in Panama and other countries, is real if we want to look at cage culture for fish, but also other aspects of aquaculture can also be considered. Coastal protection, what we as coastal do best in terms of coastal stabilization and enhancement, and also the opportunities therein for looking at gray-green solutions, where you can build coastal engineering structures and then have habitats transplanted onto them. So you could have a breakwater in your near shore area, and then you could transplant corals onto them, which would help to activate the natural breakwater features into like semi-reef habitat formations. That would be of use there as well. Okay. So when we're looking to monetize coastal resources, what's the first thing that comes to mind? And everybody's going to say that when you're looking at these things like turtle viewing, coastal cruises, diving, snorkeling, motorized water sports, passive water sports, commercial fishing, glass bottom boats, party boats, sea kayaking, jet blading, underwater culture heritage, which speaks to viewing underwater wrecks and going to underwater coastal features of significance, are what everyone is accustomed to. And those are the most dynamic and driven approaches that we have right now. Unfortunately, all of them are tourism related in some form or fashion, but that is the real driver that we have. If we want to look at new areas for opportunity, we have to look at other things that can be of benefit. We can look at coastal development of coastal community trails and hike routes. We know that there's a lot of hiking and hiking groups that have started up, and they have differing calibers of persons taking part in those activities, and they're normally led as a means of not only to get healthy, but also to provide some level of environmental exposure and hike experience, entertainment wise, etc. But you have to bear in mind that how you use these trails can also be a direct benefit to the communities once the communities decide to get involved. Way back in 1999, 96 and 98, the Coastal Zone Management Unit had a community trail project that we developed between Bath and Martins Bay that was working really well. Community involvement in stabilizing, enhancing the trails. We also looked at training community personnel to be tour guides, etc., and hike leaders along the way. And that was working well until, unfortunately, some big business tour operators decided that they wanted to take it over and try to monopolize things, which caused its immediate collapse. Things like migratory bird watching, which used to be a pastime. A very small group of people would come, but in areas where we had wetlands and mangroves, especially places like Graham Hall Swamp and Chancery Lane, were well known for migratory bird watching. And we had things like we used to have a single osprey, and then we had a nesting pair of ospreys, or I should say a roosting pair of ospreys, not nesting, but roosting pair of ospreys here that would come seasonally. We used to see birds like blue herons and other things coming. They may still be coming, but the opportunity for actually keeping track of those migratory birds has definitely fallen off in the last 20 years, right? New areas for consideration is things like sea salt production. There are simple ways that you can actually make sea salt, and as small business initiatives, you can maybe look at that, because generating Barbados sea salt may be something new and maybe something of value into the future. Sea moss cultivation is another area that people have talked about for a long time. I do know that the BIDC actually has a small sea moss farm that has been restarted back up to the north of the island, and they may be looking for more active participation in that. They're looking to see right now how that system is actually working out, and it's working out quite well. Their intention really is to look towards export, but then you need to have controlled management of numbers and control of the quality of the product being produced. I do know that in terms of the next one, sargassum and cosmetics and body scrubs, there are some cottage industry persons that have been able to integrate sargassum into their cosmetic products that they're making, and it seems to sell quite well at some of the farmers markets and a couple of other places. But the ability to actually ramp that up into a larger production scale is something that would need further consideration. Sargassum as an agri-stimulant, which has been used in the past by putting sargassum on agricultural beds, etc., to help increase the growth and survivability of young plantlings, has also been working reasonably well. We do know there's actually a company in Barbados now that has been established to look at a liquid fertilizer made from sargassum, and that works well. Sea turtle nesting patrols, that would be something that could actually help out the Barbados Sea Turtle Project, whereby some people do like to come and see nesting turtles. I know it's something that the Sea Turtle Project would shy away from and frown against, but in other parts of the world, it is something that provides an avenue as a resource. Numbers have to be controlled, noise has to be controlled, and the manner in which people behave on these things also has to be controlled, because this is really and truly a viewing opportunity that requires almost like little silence, and using certain types of lights. You cannot go in with broad beam floodlights and spotlights, etc. But lights of certain wavelength have to be used in all cases so as to not disturb the turtles as they either come up to shore to nest or during the process of nesting, because despite everything that's going on, they will abandon the nest and move away if they are disturbed. Seasonal seasonal whale watching is something that I think personally is going to be growing within the next 5 to 7 years. Right now, we've noticed that humpback whales are coming to Barbados every 2 years, right? Normally a mother and calf. Sometimes you find the complete pod, which is the family, the male, the female, and the calf. So once those whales actually are in our waters, all the social media pages are normally lit up in terms of notification as to where it was last seen, etc. And therefore, there's a need to look at management and control of how you interact with these cetaceans to ensure that you do not do anything to disturb them. Because as a mother and a calf, the female will become very aggressive if disturbed in proximity to the calf. So, you know, it isn't something where everyone sees on National Geographic, where some people feel they can just hop in water and be taking pictures or zoom right up to them and be touching them and all that sort of stuff. That doesn't play with these animals. You have to be very calm and quiet with them. If they choose to swim up to you is one thing, but there's a certain distance that's deemed a safe distance that you must stay away from them, even to enjoy the viewing experience, right? Citizen science for monitoring of coastal resources is something that I think will also take off into the future. There's a lot of talk that there's a need for greater reporting and understanding as to the coastal resources themselves, and some of the public can get together to do that. We do know that some school children, as part of their SBA programs, have to look at monitoring coastal areas or environmental areas generally, and look at what's going on within those spaces. And if they were to continue doing that on an annual basis with each set of groups that pass through, they would then be able to maybe pick up trends over time. But more importantly, if you have NGOs that have a keen interest in the environment, they can start looking at citizen science. Commercial diving, boating, and yacht repair. We know that there's a plan for a significant haul-out facility in the area of the Shallow Draft coming soon, and therefore yacht repair and yacht supplies are going to become more important then. Whether or not that's for visiting yachts or just local yachts, I have no appreciation at this point in time. And then also looking at blue economy data and statistics. Sometimes we have to actually step back and start looking at how we can start collecting data on the blue economy, because right now we are not doing that. And one of the things that I have found in talking to a lot of people is that they keep claiming it's very difficult to separate out blue economy data from the normal aggregate of data that we have. And that may mean that we may need to have an independent reporting mechanism for blue economy data, because the manner in which the data is being collected right now doesn't allow for easy segregation or separation of data.
Okay.
In the final wrap up, I think I can stop here so I would allow sufficient time for questions. But what we can say in essence is that these are the sort of areas of consideration that can be looked at for the future. They all seem to be very large scale in nature, and that's unfortunately the beast that we're dealing with. The ocean is a very large space, and therefore risk is involved and investment opportunities are going to be involved. Within the coastal space itself, We have to find new areas of opportunity for investment, as well as new avenues that can lead to potential new resource generation, right? And I know there are a couple slides after this, but I think I'll just stop here and open myself up to any questions that persons may have. If I went too fast, I'm sorry, but I know I only had a short period of time to do this, so I hope everyone was able to understand what I was saying and that I didn't move too quickly for everybody. Thanks a lot.
Well, thank you so much, Dr. Brewster. I can attest to the fact that the speed was just right.
Okay.
The pace was just right. And I mean, you did share a wealth of information with us, lots of data on how we can really maximize the ocean resources. A few takeaways. I wasn't aware that Barbados is maybe number one in the region relative to the vastness of the ocean around us. That is rather interesting. And maybe, I don't know, the position of the country, the most easterly in the chain. So I suspect that may have contributed somewhat. But it says is that we have opportunity that we can maximize. Yes, compared to the other countries in the Pacific and other places, we don't match up. But at least here in the region, we definitely have the potential for commercialization. I took note though that there were about 12 sectors mentioned for economic activity, and I immediately wondered, how many of our small and medium enterprises are actually involved. And I started to look at my own membership, and I know that we have small businesses that use like the sargassum of late in their beauty products. This has become a hit for some, but there's so much potential that I think we can look to. But clearly, the first question that comes to mind is the ability to access the capital needed now to monetize the opportunities that are before us, because we can see those big businesses, those with the bottomless set of resources, can do so with ease. But for our small firms to access some of those 12 economic sectors that you identified, brings up that old question, the proverbial question about access to capital. So that is something that I'm sure others on the call may be thinking about. Well, let's get into the Q&A. I'm also sure if you want to give a quick comment there, and then we'll get into the questions and comments.
I think you're right. I think that is always going to be the big challenge, to get the investment capital to move forward. But I think too that if you can come up with the new and innovative ideas, you have to have discussions with entities like BIDC, who are working with other programs like Bloom and them to assist with small business incubators to start up and see where it can go, right? I honestly think that there are some opportunities, but people are just blown away by the scale and level of investment that will be required. And sometimes it may mean to form things like co-ops or consortia of small businesses generally to come together to focus on one area that may have similar opportunities of interest, and see whether or not through that you can go forward through an incubator initiative to gain help. Because you're right, other lending institutions are not going to be viewing some of these things favorably, because of the size of the businesses, etc.
And you can appreciate that pursuing opportunities in the ocean begs the question about collateral. I can offer a joke. No comedian here. I can offer a joke easily on that. What's the collateral that you're gonna bring forward if you're going to access the ocean resources?
Yeah.
Let's get to the chat. There are quite a few questions I'm seeing here, comments. Colleagues, thank you so much for staying on with us. We try to conclude our session at least by 12. I'm going to ask for at least another 5 minutes so we can get in some of the questions and so on here in the chat. Now, Dr. Brewster, maybe we can start off with this one. I mean, you talk about the ocean is warming, and we know that climate change really is an issue for us, especially this part of the hemisphere, the world, even for that matter. And so the obvious question really is, with the warming of the waters, what should we be doing to try to mitigate that so we can preserve the ocean spaces and therefore be able to monetize them in the future?
I think that global ocean warming is something that we cannot control, right? The rate of ascendancy of temperature now continues to be astronomical, right? I think that what we have to do is brace now for what the other pending impacts are going to be. And the other pending impacts that we face as coastal, that we're trying to wrap our minds around to, are things like potential for increased beach erosion, storm surge damage, increased storminess and increased intensity of storms, etc., which means that your coastal resilience has to be improved, right? There's very little. I think one of the things that we're also trying to get our mind around as well is when we have coral bleaching events, we need to have reporting from the public in terms of where bleaching is occurring. And in those instances, if they're seeing corals that are not bleaching, that means that they have their own inherent resilience. And what we then need to do is to be able to go out and sample those corals, because our coral diversity is not extensive, right? But sample those corals to actually look at genome mapping to see if they differ from other regular corals of the same species. Then we would be able to identify if they can be deemed to be temperature resilient, and therefore look to start growing those corals out through the use of coral labs and outplanting techniques, etc. Right? Yeah. We have 2 companies here locally that have been looking at doing coral gardening through establishing nurseries and outplanting of coral fragments that were working really well. But when the temperatures came through, because they were using the same species, which was the staghorn coral, which is the fastest growing coral right now, all of them got wiped out when the temperatures came. So
this is a good segue into a couple of questions for you, because looking at the chat, I'm seeing a comment here being made that during COVID-19, several ships were docked in the Bridgetown port and obviously surrounding area. And the coral reef damage was a general concern during that time. So, maybe 2-part question. What type of damage was seen, if you have any information on that? And what is the coral reef restoration plan in light of high sea temperatures, which obviously, as you mentioned just now, can trigger the bleaching of coral, which can disrupt the entire reef ecosystem. So
in respect to the first one, at the time when we were in COVID and all the cruise ships were here, yes, there was extensive coral damage in the Carlisle Bay area. Those corals were normally in between 120 and 180 sort of foot water depth. So they were very deep corals, but the damage was extensive because there was a lot of anchor damage in terms of dropping anchors and chain sweep. So those reefs were damaged pretty extensively. The reason why that area was chosen was because that is the same generalized space that was normally being used traditionally as an anchorage. Okay, so from the time of settlement, that area was normally used by ships for anchoring. So it was almost deemed to be a sacrificial space that could have happened. The other concern that we had, though, was that you can't really and truly have vessels of that size moving up and down a coastline and then contributing to other potential damage along the coast, which was another problem. But we understood that. It therefore poses a problem for us because it's obviously the depth is beyond dive limits, so it's very difficult to actually look at active restoration of those deep water reefs at this point in time. In terms of dealing with the temperature issues on reefs right now, as I said before, the only way that we can really and truly look at reef restoration in the event of temperature is to try to identify those corals which naturally seem to be resilient to increasing temperature and try to grow those out to see if they can then be transplanted back into reef spaces to assist with reef regeneration, right? Now, corals grow at different speeds according to of the species themselves, and therefore that poses a problem because whereas we know that the Acroporus or Ricornis, which is the staghorn, those corals can grow centimeters within weeks, right? And that's no joke. I mean, you put them down and you can actually see them growing, and the tips growing almost on a daily basis because they really like shallow water with a lot of light. The other more boulder type corals, which are like the brain corals, they can take a lot longer to grow because they're the actual reef structure, reef species themselves. So the staghorn provides opportunity for rugosity, which provides variation in height and hiding points for fish, whereas the boulder type corals are the actual foundation framework for the reefs themselves, which are the ones that take the brunt of the breaking of waves in their natural shoreline defense.
Right. But you did say to, to share if we see any bleaching, and I've seen a comment here, I guess you've seen it as well, that seasonal bleaching has already started as the waters are quite warm, and we have our colleagues saying that we have some staghorn alive in the southern reefs.
Okay. Oh, that's good.
So you already have a comment here. And we have persons calling for some sort of cooperative, some sort of consortium, and we agree of small firms that can maximize opportunities. But you may comment on this, Dr. Brewster. What about, arts and craft, and how can we possibly, incorporate this sector, integrate this sector in the building out of our ocean spaces? Arts and craft, that's an interesting one.
Well, I think that the issue with arts and crafts is not easily captured or reflected within this approach, but as part of culture, it is very important to capture your marine spaces and your scenic ocean spaces. So I think that it is still an area worthy of exploration. In the past, both in NIFCA and in some art galleries, we have seen the incorporation of things like broken sea fan, which may have washed up on the beach, into artwork. So, there are those levels of opportunity. Once you have a storm and sea fans wash up onto the beach, people normally like to collect sea fans when they're walking the coastline because of their unique formations within their own right. I think obviously the capturing through painting of sceneries and underwater perceptions of sceneries becomes important, and we've seen those in the past. I think that you don't get much promotion of marine environmental artwork generally. People normally paint coastal landscapes, they paint traditional houses and road scenes and those sort of things, but the actual marine life and underwater activity life, they don't normally see much in terms of that. And that is a new area that can also work well, especially now as there have been recent innovations within, I think, this year's budget to try to encourage those sort of activities to heighten awareness on environmental considerations.
All right, so I've had to change my devices. You know how these things go. We've learned a lot from COVID. We've been able to migrate to technology, but in the midst of that, we do get some challenges every now and again with the failure of our technology to work. So I've had to migrate to another device. But thank you so much, Dr. Brewster, for that comment. I'm looking at the chat now to see if there are any final comments or queries from our colleagues. Please remember, as I said at the beginning, that we will place our survey link in the chat for you. Please take at least another 4 or 5 minutes and give us your feedback, give us your comments on the session today. The final question, Dr. Brewster, as we look to wrap up, has to do with our tsunami preparedness, not necessarily a part of the PowerPoint presentation today, we appreciate. But if you can give us an update, because we're getting ready now to go into the Atlantic hurricane season, and persons are going to be focused on disaster preparedness, disaster management. And we did have this discussion last year. So if you can maybe give us an update before we close out on our tsunami preparedness, I think that that would be much appreciated.
Okay, so generally we're of the opinion that the approach to tsunami readiness for Barbados is going to be a phased approach. Okay, as Fabian Hines would have told you last year, one of the things that we're looking at is to systematically roll out tsunami ready recognition for coastal constituencies along the entire coastline. As it stands right now, in a few years ago, we did a pilot study for the area between Mullins and Sherman's, right? They're actually up for tsunami redesignation again now because 4 years have passed. So we're doing them again this time. But what we're doing is we're actually doing the constituency boundaries. So we're going to be doing, in essence, the whole of St. James North. We'll then be doing St. Peter, and then we're doing St. Lucie. So the boundaries have extended considerably, especially in the St. James North and St. Lucie constituencies. The St. Peter constituency for the coastline was pretty much covered. In doing that, we now will then have that section of the coastline closed off. We've also worked with St. James Central, and we have now are in the process of closing out their tsunami ready recognition initiative that was due to have finished in March this year. And my team is actually going down to the intergovernmental meeting that is going to take place in May to report on both St. James Central and Christchurch West as being completed for tsunami ready recognition as well. Christchurch West was completed last year in November. So we're making good progress, and we have to actually do another constituency also in St. Michael. Which one's that? I can't remember now, but it stretches between Batsrock and the port, right? So when we do that this year, it would literally mean that once we complete, we would have tsunami ready recognition designation for the area from the port all the way up to Cove Bay. So that's almost like half the island covered. And then we will then have to systematically roll out for the eastern side of the island after we take a break, because we've been doing this for about the last 6 years nonstop, and my team is actually frazzled, right? It sounds easy, but it is not, because it places a lot of work on the district emergency organizations to be active and participatory, because it's their responsibility to roll out these programs. This is not a coastal zone project. It is actually a project that is led by the Department of Emergency Management, and coastal zone only provides the necessary advisory and supportive interaction, especially when it comes to mapping of the coastline for tsunami flooding, evacuation, et cetera, et cetera. So we're making good progress. And I think generally the constituencies themselves are aware, once they participate, of the role that they have to play, right? I think what we also have to look to do now is let them recognize that this is an ongoing process. So every year they should be going back through their constituency and ensuring that all the signage is still intact. If signs need to be changed, they need to update and change out in terms of replacement, so that when it comes time for the tsunami ready recognition renewal, they would not be then waiting until that year to be literally starting from scratch, but they would have had a reporting process throughout the process to ensure that they're just updating, and then it makes the redesignation a lot easier.
All right, thank you so much for that presentation. As I've shared, we did have your team last year, and we are concerned about our preparedness as a country, even as a region, for any eventualities of a tsunami affecting our region. So we look forward to further updates on this in the future. Colleagues, we are out of time, and we know that this is a rather interesting topic, and we can go on and on and on, sharing on the areas of our preparedness and ability to monetize and commercialize our ocean resources, but we are at this point out of time. As I indicated before, please do spend another 3-4 minutes with us and complete our short evaluation exercise. As you know, this comes at the end of every session, and it's an opportunity for us to get your feedback on today's webinar. So all that's left now is for us to give you our closing comments and to thank you so much for being a part of our session today. Again, look out for the upcoming webinar for the month of May and June as we close out this quarter. We have some exciting topics that we're going to be sharing with you in the ensuing month. So thank you so much once again. Thank you, Dr. Brewster, for spending your hour with us today and for sharing very valuable information on our theme, how we can actually monetize the coastal resources. And we do see the opportunities that are available to us, and we look very strategically in the months to come at our ability as a sector to really commercialize the ocean space that we have around us. So once again, thank you so much, Dr. Brewster. And thank you
Thanks
to
for having
colleagues.
me. Thanks a
You're
lot.
welcome.
It was really
You're
enjoyable.
welcome.
Bye-bye.
Thanks, colleagues, for sharing a part of your Thursday with us. We look forward to seeing you on the next occasion. God bless you all. Bye-bye for now. Thank you.